Thank you for the invitation to join this call. I'm really excited to share some of the new stuff that we've been working on and do an actual live demo, walk through the examples and answer questions. So I have a couple of my colleagues on the line. Matt Moody, as I mentioned, he's my technical lead on this program. I believe I have Tony Saylor, who's our design researcher on the call as well. And I'm not sure if Loreen, who's also a content writer, is on the call. But we're all here to answer your questions and walk you through the experience today. My own special guest is Julie Turner, who's very actively engaged with our PNP community, and she's been working on multilingual for a while, and she might jump in and answer some of the questions based on her expertise and experience with the API usage of this feature since early on. She's been working closely with us, and I really appreciate her being on this call and offering to help answer specific targeted questions. I'm not watching the chat window, so I'm assuming Vesa, Matt, you would jump in and answer questions, or if you think I should address it widely, by speaking to it rather than just typing the answers, please feel free to interrupt me at any time, and sure. We can get going with that. So let's get started. So the feature we are here to talk about specifically is the multilingual publishing experience that just recently started shipping. This is for the modern SharePoint communication sites platform. The demo here is going to focus on how do we build an actual portal using this feature. So sometimes it helps for the product owners to be able to place the feature in the context of the larger end user experience or the customer experience, and what is the outcome they would wish to drive, and how does the feature fit into the larger context. So that's sort of the goal of this call. And of course, I'm hoping many of you have already taken this feature for a ride in your targeted release tenants. This feature is right now already rolled out to the targeted release entire organization customers. Because this is a site level feature, you can't enable it for specific users. So that's why we have rolled it out to the targeted release entire organization tenants, and it's done. We hope to have it generally available starting in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully by end of May, it'll be generally available for all the clouds, including the government clouds. So there's a more information link, and I'm pretty active on Twitter, so feel free to hit me up. I have several folks that have already hit me up with feedback, and we really appreciate that. And we're working on improving our documentation and also take feature improvement feedback as well. So coming to the core of this, essentially this feature, the multilingual publishing feature, was designed to help top level information portals for customers, to help them build that for a diverse audience. And by diverse audience, I mean folk that like to consume content in their preferred language as opposed to the typically published language. There is always a language variation around information consumption, and especially in these times with lots of folks working from home and being diverse, globally distributed, and working from different time zones and language barriers, it's extremely important to have a sense of community. And it's great for the internet experience for those users to be available in their language, so they can feel connected and they'll feel like they belong to a community, even though they are geographically and linguistically separated in many kinds. So that's the goal of this feature. That's the scenario we want to unblock. And we have a basic MVP experience that we have shipped out with the publishing experience that ties in together and delivers a great experience for the end users, along with the content creators and the folks that set up the site. A quick setting of the context and the scope. So obviously, we are supporting multilingual pages and news in communication sites. That's the scope of the project right now. It also involves the site name, site language, the site navigation, and site footer, hub navigation. All of these things together deliver the internet site experience, and that's part of the experience today that we're going to be working on. There is no auto translations. The content is to be provided by the content owners. So that's an important aspect to remember. What we are doing here is enabling the publishing system that brings multiple language content together and makes it easy for publishing and, importantly, consuming the content as well. So we're not focusing on collaboration scenarios, and we most definitely are not reinventing variations in the modern digital workplace experience. We have completely rethought what it means to have a multilingual publishing, and we are putting our concepts and our research-focused approach into our feature experience. So going into the demo, I'm going to do this slightly different. So I'm going to start with the finished product, walk you through what that experience looks like, and then we will go into, hey, how did we get to that place, right? So that's what I want to do. So as you can see, this is the HR site, the human resources site for the best organization, the most popular organization, Contoso Electronics, sponsored by Microsoft, obviously. And you have the site that is showing content in the language of the user, which in this case turns out to be English. So as you can see, there is it's a nice news web part that's showcasing news. There's a bunch of links in there, call out. There is footer at the bottom of the page and site navigation, and you will also notice that there is a hub navigation that is showing all the site is a hub, and you have a hub navigation spanning the multiple sites of this hub. So this would be the simple experience of folks are all already familiar with, English being typically the most demoed language and most used language in these communication sites as it is. But when we think about multilingual, so I'm now going to take this URL, and as another user, a Spanish user of the site, I'm going to access this of this tenant. I'm going to access the site. As you can see, the same URL automatically redirected the user to the Spanish version of the home page of the site. So as a user, I do not have to remember any specific URLs. The default site, the same site, can be shared with all of the users. And based on the preferred language of the end user, we automatically send the user to the corresponding page that they have requested if it's available in their language. Obviously, this site has been set up in Spanish and English, and this user, being a Spanish user, automatically lands on the Spanish homepage. And not only that, you will notice that the navigation experiences are all available in Spanish. The site name is Spanish. And if you scroll down to the bottom, the site footer is also available in Spanish. And all the content on this page is available in Spanish. As a Spanish user, I'm looking at the news articles here. And as you can see, if the news is available in my language, I automatically see that language news rolled up. But for if some reason the news is only published in English, and you only see the English language news showing up. This way we make sure that the end user is not missing out on content because it's not yet published. So we want to make sure that all available content is surfaced to the end user, and multilingual aspect comes on top of that. So if it's available in your language, we will show you that as your preferred experience. So I'm going to go click on this first news article. I'm going to attempt reading this, but it's about new options for benefits. And you are reading this article in Spanish, and you might wonder, as a user, hey, how about I check this out in English as well? And now you see that there is an affordance for that on the top right side. There is a drop down with the language selector. You choose the English version of it, and now, oh, this is the actual English version of the news article that you are attempting to read. So from there on, you have indicated to the site that you would continue reading the page content in English. You will see that the rest of the site, Chrome, has maintained the information architecture of the site itself is anchored in the preferred language. This language selector is just for the context of reading the content, is switched over to English. You go back to the home page, and now you will see that all of the content is now in English, and I can continue consuming the content in English. Even though the user's preferred language is Spanish, they are choosing to read content in English. At any time, they can switch back to the available Spanish, and they will go back to their default user experience. And their default user experience will also continue if they close the browser and come back to the site at a different time or in a different computer. Their default experience will always be honored, and the page level language selection is applicable only for the context of that content. So as you can see, this is the end user experience that we are after. We want to make sure that the end users can directly land on the language experience of their choice as indicated by the preferred language in their user profile. And they also have the added ability to switch between available languages when those content is published by the content creators. So now with that said, now let's step into how did we get to this place? How did a content creator get to this place? And as always, the journey begins with creation of a site. So I've switched over to another user who is an admin on this tenant, and we'll begin the journey of a demo site with the creation of a site. Obviously, I'm going to start with the communication site. I'm going to call this demo site. And you will notice that there is a select language option in the site creation experience. This is something to keep in mind. It's extremely important in this journey. So the default language of a site is picked at the creation time, and it cannot be modified after the site has been created. So if you are building a multilingual portal for your organization, you want to think about what is the default language that I want for the site. And the reason it is important is any page or any news article, SharePoint news article that is created in that site will be first created in that default language and then translated into the additional languages. For that reason, it's important to remember and pay attention to the default language. Again, for the ease of my demo, I'm going to stick with the English language, and I will pick a blank and I will finish. So within a matter of seconds, now you've created the much familiar communication site, and it has the basic construct setup. So what I'm going to do as the owner of the site is then go enable the multilingual feature. So you do that by going into the site settings experience. As you all know, you go to the site information panel and then go into view all site settings. And in the site settings, you will notice that there is a language settings option. You click on that, and now we have revamped this page completely. And that begins you with a question that's asked, do you want to enable pages and news? So this basically enables pages and news to be translated. This is the multilingual publishing feature, modern publishing feature that gets enabled. Obviously, there is an available English language, and then you type in another supported language. I'm going to pick Spanish. I'm most comfortable trying to juggle between Spanish and English. And as you notice, there is an option for translators. So this is the experience where an individual site will have multiple languages, and each language has a translator associated with that language, who is then responsible for the translation of the default language content into their language. And there is notifications involved by having this person in here. It is completely an optional field. You can have a multilingual site without requiring to provide a translator email, but having a translator email results in benefits, and I'll show you with the notification scenarios what those are. So I've already created a Spanish user, Renata, who is going to act as a translator for Spanish. And as you can see, you can enable n number of these out-of-the-box available languages: Portuguese, Russian, Thai, you have German, Korean, Japanese, all of these languages. You can add n number of these languages, and each of these languages can have associated translators. Or you could do an alternative thing. You can have all translators in a security group and just basically add that security group to all the languages. So all translators get the notification about all languages. It might not be preferred in some scenarios, but that flexibility is completely in your hands. You can choose to have one or a few users or a security group, Office 365 group associated with every language in your organization. And this is as far as the site owner's job goes. So now the site owner has configured this site to be multilingual enabled and selected another language and assigned a translator for that language. So with that, the site owner's job is complete. And now we can begin the journey of what it means to start doing site experiences in multiple languages. This is obviously a blank homepage. So I'm going to begin by just simply adding two web parts that I wanted to demo. I'm going to have obviously a text web part. I will add that in here. This is the English homepage. And I'm going to add another web part, which is news, which gives you a roll-up experience. Typically, the homepage of large intranet sites have roll-up experiences, have static content, have quick links, for example. All of these things are translatable. For the sake of the demo, I'm going to stick with a text and a news roll-up experience. And one thing I want to note is whatever the way that works in the news roll-up is also how it typically works with the highlighted content web part. Both these web parts are enabled for multilingual experiences. And I'm going to show you what that means. So I will call this English news on this demo site. And I am done with setting up this simple page on the site. And what I intend to do here is engage with this translations button here. And as you notice, this button showed up because the multilingual feature was enabled on the site. You click on this, and there is a panel experience which tells you you can create a copy of this page for the translation experience. So English page has been created, and once the English page is created, you then make a copy of this English page for the Spanish translations, and that is what this panel enables. Because there is just one language, I'm just going to click on create here. What this create gesture does is makes an identical copy of this English page, puts it in a special folder for the Spanish language, and makes that available for the Spanish user to continue translations. If you all notice, there was a soft ping sound, and that is the sound of an email that was sent out. So I'm going to switch to the email tab, and as you can see, the email was sent to Renata, who is a translator for the Spanish language, and it says Spanish translation is requested. So because the English admin who is created the page and requested the translation, the Spanish translator received the email. So I'm going to go ahead and complete the English content creator's job, which is actually publishing the homepage with this content. Now I'm going to switch over to the Spanish user's mailbox, and as you can see, if you think about the flow, the Spanish users the Spanish translator gets the email that says the translation has been requested, and that person can then click on start translating it. Okay, this is an important thing to notice that I missed in my demo. So you want to make sure that all translators have access to the site after you've added them as a translator. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to share. So the fact that you've added a person as a translator does not automatically give them shared permissions. So you want to make sure that the translator has permissions, and I'm going to replay that. I will start translating, and this will basically land you can see the call out here. This page has not been translated into Spanish yet. Edit to start translations. So as the Spanish translator of the site, I have been sent to the Spanish URL for the home page, which is a separate page. And now I can just go edit this page and call this is the Spanish home page. And all of this news is Spanish news. So I have set up the basic home page construct, and I will publish this page. Typically, if the actions don't happen within a 20-minute window, there will be a return notification that goes to the site administrator, the English content creator, that the Spanish translation has been published. But I'm going to continue focusing on what it means to update the rest of the page in here. So as you will notice, the site name and all of the navigation contents are still showing English. And let's go set up the site Chrome experience, the site name and the site navigation experience as the English author first. So I've switched back to this English user. This English user is going to call it the demo site is fine. That I'm going to remove the out-of-the-box nodes that show up with a communication site and create custom nodes. So I'm going to call this home page is a top level node item here. I'm going to add another node item here and call it, let's see, top news. How about that? So these are things that I can quickly translate off the top of my head in Spanish. So for the sake of the demo, there are two new navigation nodes, and I'm going to come to the footer here. As you can see at the bottom of the page, there is a footer. I click on the edit, and I'm going to add a footer item. Again, I'm just going to call it a header so I don't have to bother with the URL. I'm going to call it feedback. So typically you have footers serve as the place where contact us or provide feedback, some sort of the end of the page IA anchoring experience exists, and I'm just adding an element in there. There you go. The feedback item showed up. So now switching back to the translator experience, as the Spanish translator, I will have to change the navigation experiences in the corresponding language. So I will go into the edit experience for the navigation, and instead of home page, I'm going to, I think the translation is there you go. I think this is the translation for homepage, and for top news. If you're wondering, I'm copying it from a notebook that I have already have all of this content. That's a long translation for top news, but that's fine. So I have translated the navigation content, and I will be translating the footer content. So as you can see, all of these content can be translated when a user with that corresponding language and the permissions logs into the site. So a Spanish user logged into the site, they have full control over the site. They can then add the Spanish labels for the same navigation experiences. This is a tough one. Retro, I think I got it here. There you go. So now the site name, the site navigation and site footer is done. I will go do that with the site name. I will change the demo site to so as you can see, this site is now the site name, because the user's language is Spanish, and I'm wondering why the Spanish experience hasn't synced in yet. So it typically takes for a new site to sync in the user profile information of users, and once it is done, the site language will automatically respond to the person's language experience. So as you can see, the English is published, and then now the Spanish page is available as well. So now this is the Spanish page. Now let's go through the experience of actually creating a news article. So I'm going to switch back to the English author, and I will go in here and I'm going to add a news post. I will pick a blank news post. I'm going to create this. This is news 1. I'll add your text. Fine. I can choose to say I want to change the image. We have our wonderful file picker experience, and one thing I want to call out to the stock images that we recently shipped out. Awesome images available for free for you to use. If I could actually find the image. There you go. I want to pick this. So I will, and before I post this news article, I want to kick off the translations. I'm happy with this. I'm going to kick off the translations, and the English author's job is to finish the English page and kick off this Spanish page creation, which then automatically sends the email, and then the job is handed over to the Spanish translator to finish the work. So from that point of view, I'm going to finish this news post experience, and as you can see, the English news item shows the English news the one news item that's rolled up in English. So I'm not going to wait for the email. I'm going to switch into this. So if you refresh this page, you will see that this is the English news is still showing. So because I am the Spanish, I have logged in as a Spanish translator. I'm going to click on the Spanish. I'm going to the email arrived right now. So I'm going to do the translation work right now. So as you can see, Spanish translation requested for English news done. The translator will begin. You'll click on this and get into the translation experience. So the same call out shows up, and there is an useful text in here that reminds the user that this page requires the Spanish translation. So I'm going to translate Let's call this Spanish News 1 sample Spanish content. Okay, so one thing I would like to do is maybe for a Spanish user, I would prefer to have a different background image than this green version. So one of the things with the language content is, and the architectural approach that we have chosen is it allows for each of these individual pages to be semantically connected to each other as the translations of each other, but it also allows the individual page to have its own structure and content that best suits the person reading that content. So if there is if you can think of a world of an English page for English speaking users, and let's say an Arabic page for Arabic speaking users, you might think that the same images might not be appropriate. You might choose to have different images. While the content and the message conveyed might be identical, there might be some scenarios where different images make sense, and that's to enable such scenarios, we have come up with a model of making sure that the page can have its own image. So there is no tight coupling between the default language page and the translation page. They are linguistically connected. They're loosely coupled to make sure the end user experience is seamless. But from a content creator point of view, they have full control over the page to do as they will with the page and make sure that the best experience is delivered for that specific language. So just for kicks, I'm going to change this to a different image. And post the news. So now when I go from the English to the Spanish homepage, you will see that the Spanish news is rolled up automatically. So this is the setup experience. The news and also the highlighted content web part work in the same way. So without extra effort, as long as the content is published in English and in Spanish, you will notice that the English content will roll up when the English homepage is visited, and the Spanish content is rolled up when the Spanish page is visited. And the Spanish page will automatically be the default page for end users whose language the site is understood that their end user language is Spanish, and the user will automatically be routed to that Spanish language content. So now what I want to get into is I'm going to go back to the first site that we had, which is the HR Work site. So I'm going to navigate to that as the Spanish translator of the site. So you can. So as you can see, all of this news is available in Spanish. So I'm going to simulate the experience of what happens when, let's say, a page is updated. So one of the important aspects of having content in multiple languages is making sure that content is in sync. You want to make sure that when an update is made, we've seen the scenario where the first time a default language page is created and a translation is kicked off, there is a notification that goes to the translator informing them that a translation is required. Now let's think of a scenario where already published language content is updated. What happens then? How do you make sure that the content is appropriately updated? And this is where the translation comes into picture as well. So what I want to actually do is go to the English user as the trying to figure this out. So I will go in here. So I am the English author of this page. So I'm going into this page in here, and I'm going to edit this and say, please stop by HR offices to pick up 401k. So I'm going to edit this to say by end of month April 2020 to pick up. So this is an important update. I think it is important. So I've made this update, and now I've saved this new update and making sure that I have the right updates done. And I will go ahead and then update the news. So if you heard the ping sound, this means that The translator now received the email. English version of this was updated. So what I can do is, because it says it was updated, I want to go and see what the update was. So if you did not notice this, I actually clicked this item here in the email is a hyperlink to the default language content. I clicked on that and it loaded the default language page. And what I can do is I'm on the English page in here. I clicked on the page details. And at the bottom, there is the page diffing experience, the visual page diffing experience that we recently shipped out. If this toggle means that I can look at it visually. Oh, I can clearly see that this text was added to this. And as the Spanish translator, I can determine that this is required or not for my Spanish version of the page, and then either reject it or keep that. In this case, it sounds like it's an important update, and I would then go back, update the translation, which will bring me into the Spanish version of the page, and I'm just going to call this updated or date. So just to, I can't figure out where to add the Spanish translation, so I'm just going to do this, and I can go ahead and publish this page. So this is the making sure that content is aligned. Is again, individual pages can have their own journey, and not all changes are required to be applied. If there was a typo that was fixed in the English version, the default version, it may not be required for the translations. So the translator just ignores the change and moves on. There's nothing done. So this way, it's the people who make sure that the content is in sync, and the system makes sure that the people are notified at the appropriate times to enable them to make the decision of what changed and make the decision for themselves for whether the page needs the update or not. So now, the third notification scenario that I want to show is when the translation is published. So far I have not shown you that. So to that effect, I'm going to go back to, I've already prepped this. So typically all of these notifications and changes happen on a longer time scale than a 40-minute demo window that I'm having here. So I'm piecemealing the experience together. But typically over a page creation takes over a period of time. And once the translator is notified, the translator is going to take X amount of time before they actually engage with this. So what we've done from a system point of view is we've engineered some level of heuristic intelligence to make sure that there is not too much noise with notification. So that is why within a 20-minute window, you will not see too many notifications to the same user. So we want to make sure that if a person is making changes and saving the page, there isn't a constant stream of page updated emails going to the end user. We want to make sure that there is a level of a batching logic associated with this experience, so the translators can be notified at an appropriate time, or the page creators can be the default author creators can be notified at the appropriate time. So I will demonstrate that here. So I've logged in as a translator. You can see that only the English version is published in here. Okay, so this is the page I want. So as you can see, this Spanish version of the page has not yet been published. It has been available as a draft for a while. So in this demo experience, I'm just going to actually publish this. So this is the completion of the experience where the primary page was created, the default language page was created, and it was then submitted for translation, and then the translation was completed. And now you will go and see that the Spanish translation was published. This is the email you can expect when the translation has been published, and the page creator will be notified that the Spanish translation has been published. So just to recap the scenarios end to end, so you would see, and just like the site navigation and the site footer, you will also be able to have a multilingual experience for the hub navigation. So So as the English author, I'm able to come and set up the full navigation in the English language, and the same site, you log in as the Spanish author, and then you will be able to edit and add the Spanish labels to the same navigation nodes for the hub navigation. So essentially, with the combination of hub navigation, site name, pages and news being available in multiple languages, and the footer also available in multiple languages, you now have a cohesive multilingual site experience that can be presented to your end users. And the end users will make sure that their preferred language content is automatically provided when that language is published, and individual end users can switch between available languages using this drop-down experience. And for the creators, when a page is created, and translations are requested, the translators are notified. Once the translations are published, the page creators are notified. And if the default language page is updated with new content, the translators are also notified in that scenario, making sure that the content can be kept in sync across the multiple languages. As I mentioned, here is the example. So in the English page, there is the quick links web part, which is all in English. And typically, this is where the translator would spend the time, make a copy of this page in Spanish, and then they will go enter the Spanish content for this. So all the Spanish users can see the Spanish quick link experiences here. That concludes my demo piece of it. Are there questions? Anything, Matt, Vesa? Anything that's jumping out at us?
Matt was pretty much, Matt and Julie were covering pretty much all of the questions actively on the chat, so that went really well. And you, by the way, get a lot of feedback on the great demo and walkthrough of the feature. I think it's a great feature, absolutely. Few questions. There's a comment related on deleting. So there was a comment related on if the source file is deleted, are we actually deleting then the copies? But that's not the case, right?
Yes. So because the pages, yes, the system does not automatically delete the content. If the default language page is deleted, obviously the other pages are sort of orphaned. They do not have a default page, but the content itself will remain in there. So the system will not delete content even if the languages are removed. For example, if the Spanish language is removed from the site experience, the Spanish pages themselves are not deleted. Going forward, Spanish will not be supported as a language for translations, but previously translated content will just remain in there. It will still be available for end users to read and get it and get access, as long as those permissions have not been revoked. But the content itself will not be deleted.
Yep. Now there's a good question from Jack related on demo on a hub site and org site and a newer organization-wide site. Just to be clear, in a hub site or an org site, any site can be enabled to be a hub site or disabled to be a hub site. And all of these features, what we're seeing here, works on any communication site.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, correct. Exactly. And one thing I will also call out, the fact that this site is a hub does not mean that all the associated sites are also automatically multilingual enabled. So the multilingual enablement is at an individual site scope level. So the hub allows you to connect a bunch of sites together for a cohesive navigation and IA experience. So if you want a multilingual experience in your entire hub, you will have to go enable the languages, appropriate language across every site individually. And the reason we are not, we're taking feedback on this and we'd love to hear thoughts around this. So it's not that all the sites in the same hub will have the same set of languages. It's possible that there is a site with English and Spanish, something else would be Spanish and German, and some other site would be English, German, and Korean, for example. It's possible that multiple sites have multiple languages depending on the content it's trying to serve and the audience it is intended for. But the hub will make sure that when a user lands on the home page of the hub site, they get the language experience of their preferred language, experience, which includes the hub navigation, site navigation, and the site footer. And the news and the pages, if they are available in their language, will automatically roll up. And if it's not available, the default language of the web will be shown. And there is a caveat there with the English language, but English language is typically preferred whenever it's available. It's a historic construct of SharePoint, and again, that's another scenario where we are taking feedback. But in general, the web default language will be shown to a user if their preferred language is not available. For example, if a Spanish user lands on a site that's enabled only for Spanish and German and Korean, and German is a default, the Spanish user will end up seeing the German language experience because that is the site default language experience. Cool.
Have any other things? So Jack is referring to org site as the home site for your organization. Home site for your organization can be a communication site, and it's just as well.
The home site is a communication site, and it can be multilingual as well, and it can also be hub enabled. All of that is true. So recapping here, so we will be generally available. Hopefully by we're working on rolling it out. It takes a few weeks for the rollout to complete. So by end of May, all of you should have this feature, and we'll look forward to engaging with you all and getting feedback, and look forward to the usage.
Absolutely, and DC is pretty active on the Twitter and the social media as well. So you can ping him at DC Padur on which we can see on the screen.